Hi, everybody. Matt and Paul here from Fiduciary Wealth with another insightful video for you today. And today we're going to be talking about the investment outlook at the moment and more specifically, what's going on at the moment and the tariffs. So these are coming from President Trump from the White House, and these tariffs, a lot of people have been talking about them. There's been an impact on the markets, people wondering what's going on, what impact this will have in the long term. So we're here to give our expert opinion, and more specifically, Paul, you're here to give your expert opinion. So I will pass over to you. So what's happening? What's going on? What are the implications?
Yeah, the market got spooked in April when Trump started making noises about trade barriers and tariffs in excess of 100%. I mean, markets know, most economies know, most financial players know that tariffs are negative for global economic growth, and they do not work. Besides, it's just a lose-lose for all parties involved. So at the beginning they were spooked, but then they realized that Trump was making a lot of noises with no intention of following it through, saying that he was going to impose the tariffs, giving them windows of opportunity to retract and to try and bully them into submission, only then to extend and then shorten the window again, and no one is taking him seriously. I think in truth, Matt, um, firstly, the balance of payments always balances, hence the name balance of payments. The US has been the beneficiary of this. Yes, they have a trade deficit in goods, but but they have a trade surplus in capital inflows. So, and part of the reason why they have a trade deficit in goods is because they offshore the manufacturing base to China in the 90s, because that was disinflationary for the US and beneficial to the US. And to suggest now that they're going to reshore everything is just nonsense, because the economic law, or the law of comparative advantage, says that you should produce a good at its cheapest price, so it's beneficial for everyone. So why would the US, for example, reshore the production of widgets, which can be done in Vietnam at 10 cents, and it costs $10 in the US? It makes no sense. If it was a defense sector, something which is vital for the national interest, one could rationalize that even if it costs more, it's in the national interest to keep it within the US. But a lot of these things are not. And yeah, they offshored it for a reason, and the US has been focusing more on developing their services sector. It's a services-based economy. Um, so, why would you impose a tariff on, say, Vietnam? Because you have a trade deficit in goods with Vietnam. I mean, what is that going to achieve? It's a poor country anyway. What benefit can and it never balances? Does that mean that countries which have, like Spain, which has a trade deficit in goods with the US, should be imposing tariffs on the US? It's just nonsensical. And Trump thinks that he's going to bully, some of their allies into submission. And I think what you'll find is that they will find alternative supply chains, and perhaps not here and now, but over a period of time, quietly, without making too much noise. They'll sign an agreement because they want a bit of stability, but behind the scenes, they're probably building new supply chains. And it remains to be seen, but it could well be that the US will lose over the longer term from creating so much disruption. I don't think there's any winners, but the US is not going to be a beneficiary of this, at least in my humble opinion. I can't see how they're going to be better off. And the other thing, Matt, which perhaps escapes everyone but is very important, is the US wants to keep the dollar as the reserve currency of the world because it's in their national interest. The way they have kept the dollar as the reserve currency is precisely, they have had deficit in goods, but then they have attracted huge capital flows into the dollar, keeping it as the main currency, on a global basis. Now, there's evidence, we haven't got graphs here to show, but it's true, that the BRIC countries are looking to establish their own currency. And the currency is going to be backed heavily by gold. It's a shame that we haven't got the graph here that we could share with the viewers, but if you look at a graph showing China, for instance, and it applies for all BRIC countries, the main BRIC countries. If you look at China, how they have divested from US treasuries, and then how they are building up their gold reserves, it's almost an inverted graph, Whilst the investment in US treasuries goes down, the reserves in gold is exploding. So all they're doing, they're saying, they're paying lip service and they're avoiding confrontation. But behind the scenes, they are disposing of the US dollar treasury holdings and investing it in gold. And the danger for the US is that whilst Trump is keen in reducing interest rates, if they start dumping US treasuries, the yield on those US treasuries is going to go higher. It means funding costs in the US will go higher, and it will create a massive problem for the US economy. So frankly, yes, it could be damaging for a lot of countries if Trump decides to proceed. I don't think he will, but if he were to impose massive tariffs on this kind, but in the long run, who's going to lose out? You have Canada aligning themselves more closely to Europe. You have Europeans and some other countries, allies, historical allies, looking at BRICS as trading partners. I think the US are on a hiding to nothing by pursuing this very aggressive, trade policy. Trump thinks he can just bully everyone around, and I think he'll find that he's going to get a bruised nose. It might not be evident immediately, but certainly over the medium to long term, the US will suffer. Economically, their stronghold on the global economy is going to be loosened significantly. I think they will pay a heavy price for what any logical, rational thinking individual would sum up as lunacy, because it really is lunacy, nothing else.
Definitely. I probably should add with this video as well, we're recording this on the 7th of July, just in case people think it's added, because I think they're writing to the various countries this week with the new tariffs kicking in on the 1st of August, apparently. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. One thing I did read this morning, though, Paul, because you mentioned the BRICS, actually, so Trump is now threatening, is it additional 10% on countries that align with BRICS? And of course, BRICS is even more powerful now because it's not the countries who formed it, it's the additional ones, which makes them huge. So he's really kind of fighting. Is this because he's so fearful of the BRICS, or is he just
because he's a bully? He can run. I mean, I saw the news headline and I was going to raise it. The news headline this morning, and it's exactly that. Trump has now threatened BRIC countries with an extra 10% tariff just for being part of BRICS. Listen, it's a free world. He's the leader of a country that prides itself because it's the leader of the free world. And he thinks he can bully China and Russia, really? And he's already alienated all its NATO allies. I mean, you just have to see they're just playing along, but they despise him. He has no friends. He has no no one to turn to. And, now he's going to attack BRICS? Really? You think the Russians and the Chinese and North Korea and all that are going to Brazil and India? It's plus, as you rightly say, all the other countries that are now joining.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he's on a hiding to nothing, and they're just going to coordinate the disposal, of, I reckon, of U.S. treasuries and keep building their gold reserves. It'll be a slap, but you don't see this. You don't see the hand slapping your face, right? But they're just doing it quietly, not engaging directly in an aggressive manner, but they're just quietly, yeah, doing what they have to do to protect their own national interests and to hurt the US, the US for imposing the tariffs. So it's just not going to end well for anyone. And I think, frankly, Matt, I wouldn't be surprised if he backtracks on tariffs again, because he does it, with his empire. He can bully his employees and everyone, his lawyers and everyone. But can he really do it at a global stage? As if the US was his own company. I really don't think so. Um I think in the end, it's going to be a really could be a chaotic period, but I think the main beneficiaries are going to be the BRIC countries. I think the US will be hurt by this in the longer term. So at least the market now is just ignoring anything that comes out of Trump. Because as you know, Matt, one day he makes up, then the next day he imposes them, then he extends. And you can't take seriously a global leader that is not consistent and coherent in his policy. And, he changes every couple of days.
Yeah.
I think the market is right in ignoring the noise, and it might react if it does something really crazy and imposes trade barriers or tariffs 135%. But for now, I think it's just looking another way. I think they're not, yeah, he's not someone to be taken seriously.
Yeah, true. I think the only problem with the markets with Trump is the lack of stability. Markets like stability, and I
Yeah,
think Trump brings the opposite of that, doesn't he? And like you say, it's one statement today, and the reversal of this few days later, and it feels like with the BRIC countries, they obviously met at the weekend, and he's from the outside looking in. He's like the guy who was invited to the prom, to use an American expression, and now he's throwing back. But I guess time will tell.
time will tell. But I think, I mean, this goes hand in hand with our views of gold. But I think at the rate that some of the BRIC countries are, and it's not just BRICS, that they're building their gold reserves, it's at a phenomenal pace. And I don't think that's going to change, Matt. And the biggest tailwind for gold is lower interest rates. We still haven't had lower interest rates. I think they might come. They might come. Trump wants to replace Powell with one of his minions that has a supportive view on monetary policy, on cutting rates. But they're building their gold reserves. That's going to drive the price of gold even higher, especially because he creates a lot of, as you said, rightly said, market uncertainty. And gold is, the perfect hedge against instability and uncertainty. And at the rate they're buying gold, there's not enough gold being mined um, to keep up with the pace. So, if things get worse from here to the end of the year, a gold price of 3,700 to 4,000 is not impossible.
Well,
Let's see.
we will. Perfect. Well, Paul, very grateful for that. I'm sure people watching have found that incredibly interesting. Any questions or people want to discuss their own personal investments with us, feel free to reach out as always. There's more videos coming, so please subscribe, like, share, leave any comments that you want for us. But for now, thank you and goodbye. Bye.
Bye.